Hi, Laura. My mother-in-law's voice came through the phone, harsh and bossy. We've moved into a new condo. You don't do anything, so you should apologize to us and serve us, she ordered. I gripped the phone tightly, feeling both shocked and angry as I looked around my empty, quiet house. Everything felt off. Even my work stuff was gone, my heart racing. I called James, hoping for answers, but his voice was cold when he answered. Mom told me what's going on, so you need to apologize to us first, he said, before hanging up. In that moment, something inside me broke. My name is Laura. I live with my husband, James. When we first got married, I never imagined things would turn out this way. We live in a big house with 2 floors. About 3 months after our wedding, James invited his parents to our home. He said, I want to invite my parents here to see how we're doing. Your parents are gone, but mine are still around, and I want them to know we're okay. I agreed, since my parents had already passed away before I married James. My dad died in an accident when I was in high school, and my mom passed away from exhaustion after working long hours to pay for my college and other expenses. After that, I became independent so my parents wouldn't worry about me. Then, I met James through a blind date set up by a college friend. I wanted to marry someone who cared for their parents, too. James really loved his parents. He even cried when he found out my parents were gone. I think he cried because he felt bad for me, not being able to take care of them. I'd never met someone who understood my pain like that, and I thought we could have a happy family together. Since I lost my parents so young, I knew I'd regret it if I didn't take care of James' parents while I could. I wanted to show my love and respect for them, but they took advantage of my good intentions without a second thought. A week after James asked me to invite his parents over, they came to our house. Oh my, this house is so old, I heard my mother-in-law say, rubbing her chin. It's not new, but now I can see it. I didn't respond because she was right, the house was old. It's true this house is pretty old, James added. I've been thinking it's a bit shabby too. You're right, Mom. At that moment, I couldn't disagree with his mom, so I stayed quiet. Then my father-in-law asked, if you were going to live in a house for a long time, wouldn't it make sense to buy a condo or a new house? Why didn't you do that? James glanced at me. I was about to answer, but James cut me off, saying, Laura wanted this house, and I just agreed with her. We're newlyweds, so I thought it would be fine. We ended up staying in this house. When James said it that way, it made it sound like I was being selfish for wanting to live here. My in-laws looked at me in a strange way, and I could feel the tension. I was about to explain, but James slapped me on the back and said, well, James and Laura are doing fine, Mom, don't worry. My in-laws looked at us anxiously, which made me nervous, too. They had plans to visit the theater nearby, so they quickly looked around the house and left. I couldn't correct what James had said, and they left confused. I didn't know at the time that their misunderstanding would cause problems later, but the signs were already there. After visiting our home, my mother-in-law started calling me, usually when I was busy at work. Laura, let me tell you something. As a wife of many years, don't expect your husband to do everything you want. You're an adult now, and a wife. You miss your parents because they weren't around to spoil you, right? But that's not how things work. Wives shouldn't be spoiled. I felt dread rising every time I saw these messages after work. My head was spinning. Why do I have to deal with this after work? I sighed, frustrated. I didn't expect her to say something like that, but I understood why. When James invited his parents over, he spoke in a way that made it seem like I was selfish for wanting to live here. I think he interrupted me on purpose when I tried to correct him after they left. When I told him he should clear up what he said to his parents about me being selfish, he frowned and said, why don't you just do it yourself? Dad and Mom already agreed with me. It's not a big deal. Don't bother calling them, okay? If you suddenly say something different, they'll be so confused they won't be able to eat their meals. I didn't agree with him. I didn't think telling them what James said was wrong would make them lose their appetite. They ate fine when I talked about losing my parents. It's unlikely they'd be upset over something like this, but I didn't want to cause any problems, so I decided to keep quiet like James asked. I had never wanted to live with them, and I figured I'd only see my in-laws on holidays like Thanksgiving and New Year's. But after unexpectedly receiving another lecture from my mother-in-law over the phone, I wasn't sure I could stay quiet much longer. I saw the messages, but didn't respond right away. I went home and showed James the messages. Hey, James, I've been getting a lot of messages like this from your mom. James was surprised, his eyes widened, not expecting his mom to contact me like this. Okay, he said. I told you not to say anything. I'll talk to my mom. He called her immediately, but James was always doing things that didn't help me. He said to his mom, please don't send Laura these strange messages, or I'll be in trouble with her. I hadn't said anything to make him feel like he needed to defend me, I just showed him the messages, but this would only make my in-laws think I was being unreasonable. Even if they would lecture me the next day, regardless of what James actually said, they could still view me badly, simply because I wanted them to stop sending me those messages. I felt like I had given up everything I thought I would have with James to help support his parents, but all of that changed as soon as we got married. After that, I worked from home, but one day, while I was busy, I kept getting messages from my mother-in-law. I checked my notifications. James told me, "You're always at home." She wrote, "Irma and I are going to the theater tonight, so I'm staying at your house until then." I shuddered. I replied, "I'm home, but I work from home. I can't entertain you both right now because I'm busy." But my mother-in-law replied, "You're not really working, you're just at home. Don't lie to me just because you don't want to entertain me. I don't like that about you. As a housewife, you should know better." It's true that I work from home, and James knows that. So why is my mother-in-law getting the wrong idea? I'm starting to lose trust in James too. It feels like he's trying to make me look bad to his parents. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but now I'm sure. James is trying to make things worse between me and his parents, but I don't know why he'd want to do that. He's been a huge disappointment. Just as I was thinking about this, the intercom rang. Sure enough, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, Irma, were at the door. I let them in, hoping Irma, being younger, might understand that I was busy and explain it to my mother-in-law. "Mom," I said firmly, "as I told you in my message, I work from home. I can't entertain you both while I'm working." My mother-in-law sighed loudly and said, Okay, enough with the lies, just serve the tea." She pushed me toward the kitchen. I looked at Irma, hoping she would back me up, but she was glued to her phone, ignoring me. I'll have a Coke," she muttered. I replied, "We don't have Coke." Irma rolled her eyes and slouched on the sofa, looking annoyed. "Well then, just give me some juice, whatever it is. You're living on my brother's money, so at least entertain us, his family, you're his servant," she snapped. My eyes widened. Yes, I married James, but that doesn't make me a servant to his parents. I snapped back, "I don't know what James told you, but I'm not living on his money. I'm working, and you're interrupting my job." I knew if I didn't speak up, they would look down on me, so I grabbed Irma's arm, stood her up, and walked her to the door. "Hey, I'm Xavier's sister. How dare you treat me like this and throw me out of the house, you devil of a wife," she yelled. After that, I kicked my mother-in-law out too. She stood there, glaring at me, and shouted, "I went through all this trouble to welcome a poor woman like you. How dare you? If Xavier had left you, you'd be starving." I looked at them both coldly. "I can live without Xavier. You're the ones who've been fooled by his lies and are treating me like a servant. You idiots," I yelled, slamming the door behind them. They screamed at the door for a while, but I ignored them. Eventually, they left. I'm sure they were worried about what the neighbors might think, but I wasn't worried because I knew the neighbors would be on my side, no matter how much noise they made. That night, when James came home, he told me what his mother and Irma had said to him. "I can't be with someone who neglects my family. If this happens again, I'll divorce you immediately. Write your name down." He handed me the divorce papers with his name on them. It was something I had never wanted, but I had reached a point where I just wanted to get rid of my husband, who constantly told lies about me to his family and tried to undermine me. Without hesitation, I signed the divorce papers and put them away at the back of the cabinet. Later that night, I took the papers out and kept them close. The next day, I left for a meeting and came home to find the house empty. My room was unchanged, but the things in my office were gone. I quickly called James, but before he could answer, I got a call from my mother-in-law. "Hello, Laura, James and Irma are at a condo. You do nothing, so you should get down on your knees and apologize to us. Until you get a real job, I won't even tell you where we live. You need to realize how helpless you are," she said. Something snapped in me. I hung up and called James right away. "Mom told me about everything, so you need to apologize first," he said. I interrupted him. "I'll file for divorce, and if you don't return my things that you stole today, I'll call the police. The furniture in the house was mine, right? I'll report that too. After the date is passed, you're out, and I'll make sure everyone knows about your lies." I hung up, grabbed the divorce papers, and filed them at the municipal office so they couldn't be revoked without my consent. Later, while sitting in a coffee shop reading a novel to calm down, I got a call from James. He had hired someone to return my things, and when I got home, my stuff was back in place, including the furniture. James was there, finishing the last of it with the contractor. I sat at my computer. "What did you want with my computer?" I asked. James, sweating, responded, "My sister needed a new computer, and we thought yours was perfect." I checked the computer and was shocked. "Lucky for you," I said. "If you had deleted any of my work data, my company would have sued you and your family." He turned pale. I glared at him. "I see you've moved into a townhouse. Where did the money for that come from? You told me you couldn't afford rent because of a $20,000 debt, but now you've moved into this place I inherited from my parents. Where did you get the money?" James shifted awkwardly. "Actually, I didn't have any debt. My parents wanted to live in a condo, so I was saving up for it," he muttered. I sighed deeply. "I'm getting a lawyer. I'll make sure I get my share of everything, since I've been paying for our living expenses, and I'll charge you for the money you owe me, since you always said you didn't have enough." He started crying, but I wasn't going to forgive him just because of that. During my meeting with the lawyer, James agreed to pay me a large sum to keep me from revealing the lies he'd told. He also admitted that they'd moved to the townhouse, but after losing all their money, they couldn't afford to stay there. Whenever my lawyer called him in, he used his paid vacation days to avoid coming, which delayed everything. Eventually, his boss asked, "Why are you taking so much time off?" James said it was for meetings with me and my lawyer. His boss then called me and said, "It's terrible that you could get alimony after cheating on James. Is he lying to you too?" I sighed and replied, "I gave him my name, and he should look me up online." His boss apologized to me. "I'm a businesswoman earning $600,000 a year, so it's no surprise my name is well known online." I explained what James had done, and I believed his only reason for speaking badly of me was his pride, unable to accept that I made more money than he did. I didn't want false rumors to spread about our marriage, so I asked his boss to clear things up. My company worked with his employer, so he had no choice. As a result, James's salary was reduced, and he was demoted, leaving him unable to pay his rent. Realizing he couldn't support himself, James finally told his family the truth. That evening, my mother-in-law called me relentlessly. I checked my phone and saw 47 missed calls. She was persistent, even though I was working as I had explained many times. I sighed and blocked her number. The next day, my in-laws and Irma showed up at my door. "James is sorry," my mother-in-law began. "Stop making it harder for him," Irma added. "I didn't know my brother didn't make that much money. He always seemed rich. You can stay with us if you want." I opened the upstairs window and picked up my phone. "Hello, police. There are 3 suspicious people causing a disturbance in front of my house." They quickly left. James's parents, who had quit their jobs expecting him to support them, couldn't afford the condo rent. Irma, who had been fired for her bad attitude, joined them as they all had to move into a small 1-bedroom apartment. They blamed James, saying, "It's your fault." A few months later, James couldn't stand the situation anymore, ran away, and was fired for repeatedly missing work. I heard that they were all evicted and now homeless, but I don't know the full details. I'm still living in the house my parents left me, but I'm thinking about moving to a condo or a smaller place.